So we have information on this table on the side here, and the day of action is a rally in Sacramento that will take place on Tuesday the 15th next week. And we are gathering together to make our voices be heard and let the legislators know that we oppose AB 2943. So pick up the information, and hopefully you can jump in your car or get on a plane and get up there and join us. I will be there as Karen and a few others, some of our leaders here, will all be there joining together to make our voices be heard. And then also we have voter registration forms on the table here. Mike talked about voting. That's really important. And we have a form that kind of outlines some of the party platforms for each of the two main parties. You can take a look at that. And that's pretty much it over there at that table. So the main attraction today is our big hot topic. I think that if you are on Facebook or if you pay attention to online news, you may already know that people across the country are talking about comprehensive sex ed. And if you haven't heard that, you should go take a look because it's happening. There was an organization that started a kind of sit-out of parents from North Carolina that kept their kids home from school one day because they were opposed to comprehensive sex ed. So it's not just in our community, it's not just in California, it's all over the country. And the thing is that people are spreading the word. People like you are doing their best to become educated about this really important issue. Because we can all agree, you can do politics and you can have policy and you can have people elected and you can do all of these things in our country today, but keep your hands off of our kids. I think that's we can all agree upon that. And so that's why we are here today. We are common ground. We share all of these values about protecting our kids and their futures, the future of our country. We love our country, we love our families, and that's why we're here tonight. So thanks a lot for being here. So next, what I'm going to do is introduce Karen England. If you want to come up, Karen, let's give her a warm welcome. If you were not here last month, we have her presentation on our Facebook page and our website, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So here's Karen. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you. So how many of you, and I know why she left this short, she didn't say it, but it's because I'm short. How many of you were here last month? So we're going to talk about comprehensive sex education. Oh, I wanted to play a video for you all. I'm going to, first, if you have young kids, or really you need to leave for just 3 minutes because I'm going to play a video that was just passed in Fremont and it's a very popular video that they're passing for middle school and high school sex education. And so I'm going to play it for just a few seconds. So everyone leave that wants to leave.
Will this be on the website?
It probably won't make the censors, but yes, yeah, you can get it. And I'd also have to know how to make this. Oh, I think I know how to make the screen bigger.
If you're still struggling with consent, just imagine instead of initiating sex, you're making them a cup of tea. You say, hey, would you like a cup of tea? And they go, oh my God, fuck yes, I would fucking love a cup of tea, thank you. Then you know they want a cup of tea.
Welcome to what's going on in your middle school and high school classrooms all across California. This was just up for approval and on the official website of Fremont Unified School District website. And thank goodness a parent was bold enough to go to the school board meeting and play it at the almost an 8-hour meeting. I watched it all online because I'm geeky like that. And they changed it to the clean version, but here's what most of us don't know. There are school boards all over approving the video because there is a clean version. And then in the classroom, this is the version they're showing because it's cool. Fremont didn't do the switcheroo before the school board meeting and had what they're actually showing up on the website and the link to it. So I actually took a video of myself linking to it because I knew the minute, then it would be down, the minute somebody confronted them over it. But this is happening all over. And they're approving the clean version, or they're just showing the school board a clean version, but nothing else. And that's what's being shown in the classroom. Like I said, a week ago, you could have gone to Fremont Unified School District and found it directly on their website, linked as part of their curriculum. So that's an example of what's going on. Now that I've offended everyone with the bad words, we're going to talk about comprehensive sex education. Forgive me for anything that I'm repeating. I'm going to try and go a little fast so that we can talk a little bit about some of the examples of curriculum. I did clean up my desktop. I know it doesn't look like it, but I did. Okay, okay, so comprehensive sexual education. You're reading about it everywhere, like Gina mentioned. It doesn't matter where, on Facebook, on the news, Tucker Carlson. The difference is California is one of the very few states, we're the only state that has a state law as aggressive/progressive as we have. So there are a lot of states or local principalities in different states that are starting to pass what's called comprehensive sex ed. Actually, half of the states don't even do sex ed as a state. So lots of districts don't teach this because they believe that not only is the parent the first educator of sex education, but should be the only educator of sex education and not the public school system. That's personally what I believe. But if you do want to go to public school and get the birds and the bees, then like when we grew up, we were talking earlier, it's the birds and the bees. And you're blushing, and you didn't even want to be in class that day. California, in 2015, passed a law that said that you need to have comprehensive sex education. You must teach it once in middle school and high school. You can teach it earlier. But if you do, when you teach it, it must teach all of these things that I'm going to cover and I covered last month. Now, it's a very rights-based education. The sexuality belongs to the minor, and it's their right to explore it, express it, and that's what comprehensive sexual education is. And you will think about that as I go through some of the curriculum and some of the topics about it being a rights-based, and that you're not under any authority, and that it's about feeling and exploring who you are, and that you're sexual from birth on. So having said that, I'm going to continue. Here are the 3 approved curriculums that, agree, that are compatible with the California Healthy Youth Act, which is a law that was passed in 2015. And the 3 approved curriculums that were created as a result of the law, I sense a noise coming. Okay. The 3 that were approved or are compatible, and the State Department of Education have said, oh, these are all compatible with the law, are Positive Prevention Plus, a curriculum called Rights, Respect, and Responsibility. They're talking a lot about that in Orange County and down in San Diego. It's a free one, so a lot of their materials are being used. Even if a school district is using something else, they'll go online and grab some of the free materials from the Rights, Respect, and Responsibility. Often people call it 3 Rs. And then Teen Talk, which is from a company called Health Connected. Now, I went through Health Connected because I ran into a school board member that had the booklet, but in order for me to even order it, and again, I work for a nonprofit, it was over $900 just to get the samples. So I literally was at a conference with her, and I took a picture of every single page and then emailed it to myself and was able to analyze it. This was last year, but that's the kind of thing. If you don't go and sign up and sign on and order the curriculum, a lot of what I'm going to show you, I will have gotten through a contact or someone else, because you have to have a special password to get the teacher materials, or it's given at the training that you go to that promotes this stuff. So I'm giving you kind of the PG version, honestly, of all of this. But here are the 3, and then there are 2 other ones that are compliant with the law. And they were written by San Francisco Unified, and they used their own, and Oakland Unified. So those are the only 5 that the state says you legally can teach. So when this law was going through, the ACLU, Planned Parenthood were official sponsors. When you go back and you look, they actually are listed as the people that sponsored the bill, and that means they wrote it, and the legislator who carried it for all we know, doesn't even know what's in it. But the ACLU had a very active role, and so did Planned Parenthood. They had very crafty intentions. And honestly, on record in the Senate Education Committee, Senate Education Committee, there were only 2 organizations that opposed the comprehensive sexual education, the California Healthy Youth Act, and it was the organization I work for, Capital Resource Institute, and California Pro-Life Council. The only 2 organizations. This was 2015. Now, when I talk about what's in this, people thought I was running around saying it's crazy. Well, now you see in the curriculum. So sex education is mandatory for middle school, once in middle school and once in high school. You may teach it earlier, and if you do, you have to cover all the mandates that I'm going to go over. And what's really interesting, as this has been, people have been paying attention to this and figuring out what's going on, the left, because Planned Parenthood and they all knew this was going to happen and what the law said, they've been going to school districts and getting them to start sex education younger, and parents are thinking, oh, okay, well, my kid needs to learn the basics, not knowing that all these mandates go with it. And so, for instance, recently, the papers talked about Fremont Unified being a win, that the parents really won. The parents, they didn't really win. Their school district may teach sex education 4th through 6th grade, and they had a motion that said they shall teach it, and they went back to may teach it, and they'll do supplemental material that also adheres to the law. Well, when you see what that means, you're going to see that they're teaching comprehensive sexual education in 4th through 6th grade in Fremont Unified School District. But because the other side is very crafty and knows what they're doing when they're crafting this language and when they're passing it, and then when they're putting textbooks in front of classrooms, parents walk away thinking, oh, we won. They don't have to teach sex ed in 4th through 6th grade. No, but they are teaching it. And when they teach it, they are teaching this. And so a parent has no idea, because when you get that notice, you get it at the very beginning of the school year, and you don't think twice until your kid comes home and talks about seeing a video like that, or talking about anal sex, which is something that has to be talked about if you're going to talk about sex education, no matter what grade you teach it. So, comprehensive sexual education, I often say, and if you read curriculum from beginning to end, this is not an overstatement. I couldn't figure out why my stomach was churning, and it's almost like sexual grooming. When you start at the beginning and you read all 12 lessons, you start, is Lynette here? Okay. She used, anyway, I won't call her out, but a gal that was here at the last one, and she said, it was really weird how they talked about pleasure and just these little words that put these thoughts in your mind, and they're repeated lesson after lesson. And the other thing that's happening, even though it needs to be taught once in middle school and once in high school, for instance, in Fremont, not only, they aren't teaching it once in 4th through 6th grade, they're teaching it in 4th grade, in 5th grade, and 6th grade. And then they're doing it again in 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. So when you're doing this, it is brainwashing. And it's so extreme that people think we're exaggerating, but I'm going to show you the curriculum tonight. So it promotes gender fluidity, and the law mandates that. It promotes abortion, if the law says you have to do that. It promotes progressive organizations. The law actually says you have to do that. And it clearly obstructs parental rights. And I'll show you some of the lesson plans from Positive Prevention Plus that clearly talk about those parents with religious views. The law says abstinence-only instruction is not permitted. That doesn't mean they can't throw the word abstinence in there in a sentence, that it's the only 100% way to not get pregnant, because they'll throw that sentence in, and I'll show you out of 12 lessons, it's about one sentence. But you can't just do abstinence only. And when the teachers go through training, they're also trained to make sure that your answer to a question that might be organic from the classroom isn't abstinent only, because the law is very clear. These are the exact words from the law. Abstinence only instruction is not permitted. So even in answering a question to make sure she's not sued by the ACLU, when she's being trained, they're making sure that she's not putting any judgment when she says the word abstinence, her inflection's correct. It talks about the sexual health education must, not can, but it must respect and address the needs of students of all genders and sexual orientations. And this is where they get you if you're going to do 4th grade. If you must teach about all sexual orientations, you must talk about homosexuality, bisexuality, you must talk about anal sex, you must, and you'll see the mandates in the law, you must talk about how to prevent yourself from getting HIV/AIDS. You must talk about how to prevent, again, I honest to goodness think I was an adult before I heard that word. Maybe even like I had kids and grandkids before I heard the word. And they're talking about it as young as 4th grade and mandating it once in middle school. And every curriculum discusses anal sex in California that is approved by the state law. It must teach about gender, gender expression, gender identity, gender, and explore the harm and negative stereotypes in gender. Well, that would be what I believe. I have a negative view because I believe if you're biologically a boy, you're a boy, and if you're biologically a girl, you're a girl, and that there are 2 genders, and that's how God made you, and it's really simple, and if you're struggling, we need to accommodate you, and we need to deal with that, but we're not going to change everything in society in the classroom in order to do it. So I have a negative view, and so an entire lesson is about those of us that have that really bad negative view about gender and gender stereotypes. We're not with the times. You must talk about all the FDA, the law says this. And keep in mind, if you're going to teach sex ed in 4th grade, you must teach this too. The differences in safety of approved contraceptive methods and preventing pregnancy, including emergency contraception. Now, last month, after I was at Common Ground, I went to Orange County, and someone got up and really thought, and this is my favorite fact, and please forgive me, these are the things I do in my free time. There is no FDA-approved condom for anal sex. And she thought when she got up there and said that, because she'd been at the same conference where I learned it, again, this is what we do in our free time, she thought, well, the law says everything that they teach has to be FDA-approved. I said, no, they just need to make sure they cover everything that's FDA-approved. Does that make sense, the difference in the minutia in the law? I said, can you show me where? And she was like, right here. And I said, no, it says you must teach about the FDA-approved things. It doesn't exclude you from teaching about the other things. And literally, in all 3 of those curriculums, they have, under low risk for sexually transmitted infections, anal sex. There's a reason there's no FDA-approved condom for anal sex, because it's not safe. And they portray it in all the curriculum like not only is it safe, but it's a way to remain abstinent. These are the words from the law. These aren't the things I'm not saying this. These are directly from the law. And I quote the law in the handout I gave you all. It talks about how you have to, it does say this, delaying sexual activity is the only 100% way to not get pregnant, but it also says you must cover birth control condoms, morning after pill, HPV vaccination. It goes so far as to tell you, and the law, I don't know if I've got it on the slide, but to tell you where to go get them locally. And that you have to, in the curriculum, give them local resources. That means your local Planned Parenthood. In Advocates for Youth, they tell you that you can go to Target, Walgreens. There's 4 that they list where you can go get the morning after pill, specifically in your area. And you'll see in the curriculum when I go through where it talks about it. You must have discussions on social views on HIV and AIDS, including addressing the unfounded stereotypes and myths regarding HIV and AIDS. The instruction shall emphasize that successfully treated HIV-positive individuals have a normal life expectancy. Now, you can see there's an emphasis on promoting one thing. Abstinence only is not abstinence only is prohibited. And then all of this, that was one sentence in all of this law. And then it goes on and on and on, and that you can live a positive life afterwards. Oops, I went backwards. I know a lot about sex ed, but not PowerPoint. Okay. I think we're there. Oh, social views. So the social views, that means those traditional views that we have. We're going to talk about the negative stereotypes. The myths might be that AIDS really isn't a good thing to get. This is directly from the law, and it's a lot smaller, but it says you must have information about local resources, how to access local resources. Keep in mind, if you teach sex ed, you must teach these things. That means you're teaching fourth graders how to assert their rights, where they can go locally to access things their parents don't want them to without their parents knowing. And they're going to give it to them locally, not just Planned Parenthood. But for instance, in Fremont, it was Tri-Cities, which was right down the street. And oddly enough, one of the school board members was leaving her job at a church to go work for Tri-Cities. So confidential medical services, that's minors 12 and older have what's considered confidentiality. Long story short, the courts mandated this. And so if you're a 13-year-old, you have confidentiality just like I do. If I go to my doctor can't go tell Gina, can't even tell my husband, what I was in there for. If any of you have had teenagers and, something has even happened, even at 17, you can't find out what's going on with them. I know we're working with a young 26-year-old, and I have power of attorney, and I'm having to get conservatorship because he's still 26, and when he's irrational, he can assert his right. So minors have those rights established in California from the age of 12 and older. So they technically, legally can go get an abortion, can go get on the pill, all of that stuff without you knowing. However, the school doesn't have to be involved in it. Confidentiality ends when I'm talking to my doctor. I don't know, I've got a disease. The minute I tell Gina can tell whoever she wants. Gina's not bound by my confidentiality or the doctor's. So the minute the school gets involved, there is no confidentiality. The law in California allows a school district to either let minors go for confidential medical reasons and excuse them from class and not tell you they were gone from math class, or they have the option to not let them go. You need to know that Chino Valley Unified is allowing your minors to leave campus for confidential medical services without you knowing, and they get marked present for the day. And the teacher will not tell you because of confidentiality. And that is the policy here. And you need to know that it's throughout the curriculum because it's the majority of policies. There are some school districts that have parent-friendly policies. But these textbooks all talk about, here's what your school board policy is. And so you can go do this without parents knowing. So they talk about the different resources. They talk about how you can actually go and get these and be emancipated as a minor and not have to pay for it. How you can find out if your parents' insurance covers it without them calling your parents. Yeah, I'm happy to stay afterwards and talk about this. So Positive Prevention Plus, I'm going to pull up some of the curriculum and just show you some very specifics. This is what the law mandates. And while I pull this up, can I get someone to hand out clipboards so you can get on our email list so I can keep you updated on sex education so you don't have to come back a third time, unless you really want to. So let me give, Chino Valley is using an old Positive Prevention. Mike, stop it. You don't want to get me in trouble on purpose. Okay. There we go. Okay, so this is Positive Prevention Plus, one of the more popular that's out there. It's one that does cost money, so it's not as frequently used. Well, it is, but Advocates for Youth is a curriculum that even Positive Prevention Plus might take a lesson plan and supplement it in. because it's free and it's online and anyone can get access to it. This, you have to actually go through their training, you have to pay a lot of money to get the curriculum, and I don't know how to make the screen bigger. Okay, so you can see, this is a middle school. Very first lesson, you discuss embracing topics. This is kind of what the teacher's manual has. You identify accurate and credible sources and resources for sexual health. Do you think that that's the parent? Or do you think that's Planned Parenthood, the school nurse, and everybody but the parent? You have to talk about accurate information about gender, gender identity, expression, and sexual orientation. Very first lesson. Not how your body's changing, etc. Then goes on, and this is just kind of an outline. Lesson number 1, sexual development, and you can see they talk about identity, medically accurate. Forget biology, because medically accurate doesn't matter to them when it comes to gender. You can see how much is on sexual orientation. This is just the outline from the curriculum. It goes on about all the different lessons. And now I'm going to go into some specific lessons. But the first one I want to talk about is they talk about, before they start, and they do this in all the curriculums, they talk about embarrassing subjects and how you shouldn't be embarrassed and how, you know, blushing when you say certain words. And they talk about how the topics, you know, might be uncomfortable. They have to do with family or culture or religious beliefs, and so that might embarrass you. Again, they say it with a negative connotation. Everything throughout here about religion and tradition is all done in a negative context. And so they kind of break down the whole idea that you should blush or be modest or embarrassed, or that there's a place for this conversation, but it's not in a classroom with other 7th graders. It's within a marriage. Traditional marriage. What I find frightening is the group agreement. Well, I find it all frightening, even as a married woman. But the very first thing they do is a group agreement. And they talk about what are the things, and you'll notice I underlined here that the students decide what it is. It may include these things, so the parent will look and think that it includes that. The 7th, 8th graders come up with the group agreement. Now, the group agreement, we're not going to tell anyone. Confidentiality means we're not going to tell our parents. My kids wouldn't come home and tell me. Well, first I opted them out, but they wouldn't come home and tell me because they know I'd be right down there at the school. And so I can see, looking back now, where my kids would be like, oh, it's just easier just to not mention that this happened in the classroom today. Classroom agreements. What do you think a bunch of 7th grade boys, forgive me, men, even girls are thinking about when they're doing these group agreements in the classroom with the teacher about sexuality and their rights? Not only do they do the group agreement, before they start any of this stuff, I'm sorry, Lord. I'm trying to stop it. Okay, I'm going to move this closer, unless it comes on. Otherwise, it really is basic stuff. But you explore with the students some ideas on how to, this is part of the lesson plan. Positive Prevention Plus. Explore with the students ideas about how to improve teen sexual health. And here are the possible responses. Well, you can all read, but have parents speak more openly to your children about sex, implying that if you're not sitting around talking about sex in the 7th grade, there's something wrong, you're not open enough. Make health and counseling services more available to teens. Remember when I said they want to make activists and activist organizations? They're indoctrinating our kids about advocating for more sex ed for other kids. I mean, these are 7th graders. Limit the amount of irresponsible sex in the media. Well, we know how much time the left spends on that. Develop personal attitudes and skills that support healthy sexual behaviors for self and others. Now, when you look at this curriculum and what we mandate, do you think their idea of healthy attitudes is the same as my idea of what a healthy attitude about sex is? I don't think they're the same. Then goes on. Here are the facts, and I'm going to do this little play on words that they do, and this drives me crazy. So I learned something new. Learned how to strike out. So you guys get to put up with my technology. So less than half of all teens surveyed have ever had sex. Why doesn't it say, or less than 1/3 of all teen surveys are sexually active? Kind of sounds like everyone's doing it. Number 2 should say 75% of teens are not sexually active currently. But the way they phrase it, the majority of sexually active teens use condoms. Well, they've already established with the other 2 questions that it sounds like everyone's doing it, and then the majority of them are doing it with condoms. Approximately 1/4 of sexually active teens also use another form of birth control. Do you see how they are subtly reinforcing this play on words? Then, in the wrap-up of the first lesson, which really wasn't about anything health, thank the students, remind them about their group agreements, and that they should remember those agreements when they leave. And then a note to the teacher, openly discuss this topic, or openly discussing this topic may be difficult for some families due to cultural and religious reasons. In classroom discussion, be sure not to hold one belief over all others. Now, I know people who've been through the training. Keep in mind it said abstinence only is prohibited. Talks about negative stereotypes and how we need to get rid of those. And then it instructs the teacher to make sure that they're not talking about one belief in a positive way over the other. I mean, the reinforcement that, hey, don't put any judgment whatsoever. It's all good. Let's just exercise our sexual rights. How much time do I have?
About another 20 minutes.
Okay. Oh, okay. Ooh, we get to talk a lot more. Okay. So then they do this wrap-up that you need to check your understanding of everything that you just talked about, which was really not a lot of health. And then ask a friend to make sure you kind of understood each other. So it's this crosstalk with guys and girls openly talking about things. And then how positive are you that you can follow the group agreements? Again, they make you keep all these secrets and group agreements. The teacher reinforces it from the classroom. And then the wrap-up peer-to-peer is another reminder, don't violate any of these agreements, whatever those were, because they're going to be different in every class. I have no idea what 4th graders are, I won't pick my nose. I don't know what 4th graders' group agreements are going to be. So first, they talk about sexual development. They do a pre-test, and then they go back and they teach the second part of the test. And I'm gonna jump, but here are some of the questions that they ask you, and then they go back and tell you what the answer is. When making important decisions, it's important to evaluate your options, seek advice from reliable sources, and take responsibility for your decision. That means seek advice from someone other than your parents and be responsible for your decision by going and getting a condom or getting birth control. That's what that is saying. And when you go through the curriculum, that is repeatedly what they say. Contraception can greatly reduce the risk of unintended pregnancy when used constantly and correctly. Well, we're going to have to show you how to do that, which they will later. Another question, everyone has the same sexual orientation and gender identity. Keep in mind, we've got to knock down negative stereotypes. One belief over another isn't okay, so even if your 7th grader speaks up, I just look at you and say, oh, okay, that's your opinion. And I move on to the next one where it's celebrated. Oh, here we go. We've gotten to abstinence. Sexual abstinence is the only 100% effective method for preventing pregnancy. That's good, they covered that. Here's the other thing. Sexual harassment, I'm not going to get deep into this. This is just a personal pet peeve. Sexual harassment is when you make someone else feel bad or uncomfortable because of something you say or do. I just think that's a little bit overly broad. Because people in this room have harassed me. It goes on about making good decisions about delaying sex, even if I'm pressured by others. So then you're talking about, well, what's good for you? What does delaying mean for you? Are you comfortable when you're in love in 7th grade? Because then they go on and talk a lot about love and all of that. Look at how number 18, getting pregnant or getting sexually transmitted infection would interfere with my life plans and goals. Meaning, if it happens, go get an abortion. And I'm going to tell you where you can go locally. And not only that, but you can leave math class to have it done. A condom is the most effective in preventing HIV, STIs, and pregnancies. There is no FDA-approved condom. You can Google it. Make sure you tell your spouse in case something happens and you pass, and then they see your history. I've told my husband, I swear I'm doing this for work. This is really what I do for work. But you can check. There is no FDA-approved condom. Then, of course, they go through and the teacher tells them where they're right and where they're wrong. Here are the teacher resources. Often in the curriculum, they tell the teacher to get rid of the filter in order to take them to some of these websites to show them their trusted resources. I don't know, how many times have you heard, go home and talk to your parent, what does your church say about this? Because I'm not seeing it. Keep in mind, lesson 1 again, sex education, gender, 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 gender. Common sexual health concerns. I don't know, in 7th grade, I didn't have a lot of common sexual health concerns. Define and discuss terms male, female, masculine, feminine, sexual orientation, which is, you have to talk about what makes the attraction and what makes you gay. Gender, gender roles, transgender, intersex, gender expression, and gender identity. Lesson 1. And don't forget, we have that group agreement. And we're not going to talk negative or have any negative stereotypes. As a matter of fact, we're going to tell you about those negative stereotypes your parents have about these issues. Talk a little bit about the female body. This is actually very, I'm gonna pass those really quick, but that was a very PG. There are, 2 of the curriculums are very full frontals. Like, I'm embarrassed. My husband and I would walk out of a movie that had those things in it. And we have walked out of a movie before. Our kids were mortified. What? This was all very, very PG. Did you know that obscenity laws, 44 states have an exemption to obscenity laws for libraries and public schools? And California is one of them. So pictures in a textbook or discussions they're having in the classroom that would get you sued in a boardroom or would be considered obscene somewhere else are exempt from obscenity laws. There are 44 states and California is one of them from obscenity laws. That's how that people think, how's this graphic stuff? That doesn't mean you as a local community can't set standards that are different, but this is allowed by law. You have to step in if you don't want it happening in your community if you have different, I'm sorry, I think they think parents are gonna, and maybe it's because I've had to study this, they do the nocturnal emissions, which is, I should know all of this, but wet dreams. And I've been in sex ed committees where literally they're talking about the 6th graders and that was done on the male body, and one of the representatives on the committee that's supposed to reflect the community actually said, well, what about girls' wet dreams too? Should we be covering girls' wet dreams? And it's like they talk about this kind of like I'm talking about it right now, but they're literally sitting there debating that, and this was actually for 6th grade. And I'm just in the audience thinking, is anyone else going crazy? What? We need, let's make sure we include the girls too, and that they're nocturnal emissions at night. So part C, keep in mind, we're still on lesson 1. See how it talks about you're going to have emotional changes, physical and emotional changes that impact the parent-child relationship as you become an adult and your parents don't understand you. That's common. That's common that they aren't going to get you. Well, yeah, it's common. I mean, my kids didn't have rights until they were on their own financially and moved out of the house. And yeah, we still don't get each other on certain things. That's just how it is. I wrestle with God over stuff sometimes still. So it's not unusual for a hormonal teenager to think they know everything and for the parent to know nothing. And it's not until they have kids or grandkids where they're like, oh, I think you were kind of, sort of right. You know, it takes a long time. I'm still waiting on one of ours to come around. So anyway, I'm working out some issues, sorry. Maybe no, she shouldn't have had rights, it would have been worse. Okay, so you can see how the notes to the parents, actually this is the note to the teacher, I'm sorry. This is not a time to explore various theories on the reasons behind a person's sexual orientation or gender identity, which actually, statistically, they're two totally different things, and the reasons for it are totally different, but sexual abuse is the number one for sexual orientation. Then tells the teacher, don't use the word sexual preference because it's not a choice, and you're implying that it is. Talk about gender attitudes. Look at all these new vocabulary words. Sex, intersex, gender role, gender nonconforming, gender identity, I'm confused, cisgender, transgender, gender binary, gender expansive, sexual orientation. I remember one time asking Gina, what is the difference, honestly, and this was somewhat recently, what's the difference between this and this? She was like, I don't know, let's ask Danielle, who's in my office. And I was like, because she's younger, and I was like, I should know this. So I had to go Google it, and it's like I had to read the definitions, and I don't know technically that I could tell the difference, anyway, but look at all this. These kids don't know how to read and write, but they know what cisgender is, transgender is, intersex, gender expand, it goes on and on. This is not unusual. This is an average curriculum in California. Then they equate it being normal, like being a tomboy. So you're tomboys, and I was a tomboy, and I had 4 brothers. So the message to me would be, well, maybe I was supposed to be a boy. Maybe I was born in the wrong body. Maybe this is all just everybody else's, cisgenderism and judgment. And it's really common. Over 85% of youth who believe they were born in the wrong body, after puberty, it's 85 to 92% realign with their gender. So you're now telling kids before they even get into puberty or are in puberty and wondering, oh, go with it, you really were born in the wrong body. And those are just negative stereotypes. And your parents don't understand you because that's a normal emotional change you're going through since it's puberty. You designate a bulletin board where you put helplines, websites like Planned Parenthood, phone numbers so you can go get your abortion, the addresses of the agency so you can ride the bus there, and provide reproductive services and make it all accessible to students. Keep in mind, if you're going to teach sex ed earlier, all of this has to go in there. You must teach them about the local resources.
Gender nonconforming.
Oh, yeah, and I'm gender nonconforming, now that you mention that. Oh. Oh, okay, so yeah, you have to show, I'm sorry, what?
Gender nonconforming dressing or acting. See number 4?
I don't know my numbers, I just know about sex education. Number 4, display the slide of gender spectrum. Oh, okay, the very last one under 4, sorry. I'm sure it was Gina's fault. Gender nonconforming, I'm so kidding. Gender nonconforming, that's inconsistent with socially constructed gender roles. So when we teach our young men to open the door for a female out of respect, that would be the wrong thing to teach because you're reinforcing those gender roles, that she's to be respected, and you're opening the door. And we run a youth leadership conference, and one of the things, and before I started taking it over, staff was very good about this. We had a young man, our young men, and where's Lisa? Who all has had anyone that has come to City on the Hill? I know Calvary Chapel, Chino Hill sends kids. Our gentlemen always open the doors. No male eats before the female, even in the college cafeteria. And we're on a Christian college camp, and it's really interesting because, basketball players from the basketball camp will come in, and our guys will pull back. And if I come in, I'm running late, and all the students have gotten there, and staff has gotten there, and they see me walk in, they usher me to the front of the line. And by the end of the week, they're carrying the other girls' notebooks, they're treating them with respect. It really is heartwarming, and I remember asking one student, what was, it's a weird camp, it's a nerdy, conservative government camp, what was the thing that impacted you most? What did you not expect after coming here, and what surprised you the most? And he said, I open the door for my mom, and my dad opens her car door, but we just don't do it outside of that. And he was getting in the habit of, there's a female, and then they're opening it for other kids on campus, because that's how we treat women as young men, and that's what we're teaching our young men. But that's wrong, according to this curriculum. And that's just a role they're playing, and you don't need to play that. They then ask you to go to this total propaganda website about surveys and understanding the terms. Again, now we just can't get enough of this gender identity. We're going to cover the genderbread person. Yep, there you go. Need I say more? I'm not even really sure what this means. No, I do, but again, this is all sex ed. I think we're still in lesson 1, 2. Okay, we're 2. Oh, look, there's a hostile school climate negatively affecting LGBTQ students' educational outcomes and mental health. I mean, it's this on and on and on every single lesson. And so if you're a kid, are you really going to say, we don't believe that at our house? Or I heard this? Or I heard there's no FDA-approved condom? No. Because you're told that you're responsible for this minority's bad feelings if you do, and that it's discrimination and harassment. It goes on about, all sorts of really great stuff. And I'm going to finish up. These are just, I'm going to, lesson wrap up. Again, another note on cultural sensitivity, meaning, hush up the conservatives. That's there's no right or wrong there. Embrace the other. Make sure they feel good about what you're teaching them. That's just one of the curriculums. They almost all mirror each other. And I've gone through all of them. They're almost all exactly the same. Okay, there we go. So that was Positive Prevention Plus. You guys, Chino Valley Unified is currently using the 2010 version, and I'm doing an open records request. We're trying to find out exactly what they're using now in the classroom, now that the law has changed. We've had a little bit of a difficult time finding that out. I want to clarify a couple of things. We talked about this last month. There's something called, and they cited it in here, called the California Healthy Kids Survey. Now, California law says that you can't ask kids questions about their sexual health, belief, morals, religion without parent permission. But there's something that they're giving out in school called the California Healthy Kids Survey that they're giving out anonymously. And as they hand it out to the 20 kids or 30 kids, they say, you don't have to take this test. So if you don't, you're the one. And then they say it's anonymous, and it goes on and asks them all sorts of questions about their sexual health. Now, I told you I would do that youth leadership conference. I know exactly who's got the purple pen and does her eyes with a heart. So I know exactly when they evaluate what they thought about the week, who liked the week, who didn't, who was mad at me because, I cracked down on curfew. You can tell. This teacher has been with these students all year long. You know who's saying they're sexually active or they're not, or their parents don't get them. What happens when your kid just has a bad day when you're dropping them off at the bus? True story. My daughter's in 8th grade. I drop her, it's pouring rain, at the bus stop. She takes off, attitude, I wonder where she gets it. So she takes off, comes back in the rain, knocks on my window, and said, Mom, I am still really mad at you, but I just want you to know if you die in a car wreck today, that I still love you. And then walked off. I mean, she laughs now, but I'm like, sweet, when I picked her up, no matter, if I ever were to go. I know that. I know. But she just, pranced off, then pranced back. I just want you to know. Well, what happens when they go to school and the teacher's telling them all this stuff? Let's go with it. Don't tell your parents, keep this agreement. I can't even imagine. Crazy stuff. So that's the survey. So what do parents do? You guys need to be educated on the law. You need to get resources. Common Ground has them. Capital Resource Institute, get on our email list. You need to really ask questions and dig deeper. I cannot tell you how often I meet with school board officials or staff and ask a question and they just give you a pat answer. You ask a question one layer deeper and they either don't have the answer or it's obvious they don't want to give you the answer. A common thing that we're hearing this year is, well, we're not following the law. We're using old curriculum. Well, so you're going to violate the law? What other laws as a school board do you choose to violate? Well, so your teachers just get to decide this? What happens if the ACLU comes and tells the teacher, we're going to sue you if you don't cover this? You need to dig deeper because there's always something there when it comes to especially these issues. You need to be proactive and opt out, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to end on that. That's why I'm going past that. Don't assume, and I covered this the last time, these are the biggest mistakes parents make. You assume you can trust your school. I share the story about the gal that got up. This was in Roseville at Oakmont High School. And at the end of Everyone Over Confidential Medical Services, she got up with her WWJD bracelet. She was the school nurse and said, I don't know why you parents are so upset. When they leave for Planned Parenthood, Mike was there because we flew Mike up to testify because he was a school board member at the time and flew him up. She said, I don't know why you guys are so upset. When they leave, they have to check in with me before they leave. And at the time, it has since closed. There was an abortion clinic down the street. They check in with me, and when they get there, they have to call. And then they have to check in with me when they get back with her WWJD bracelet. I don't know what it is, but I don't know if they really believe it, if they think they're really helping. And I just got up and said, how dare you insert your values for mine and tell me I don't know what I'm so concerned about. Yeah, I was righteous indignation. So maybe I was a little bit Christ-like. Don't assume, because we're in a conservative area, and part of it right now, I would say this no matter what, but state law makes them. So as much as I don't want to give them an out, they do have an out. They can say the state law makes us do this. I love my teacher. She would never do this. That's what all the parents of the kindergartner in Rockland, California said. 4 different parents cried at 4 different times with me when they found out that their child had been subjected to a transition coming out party and read I Am Jazz about being born in the wrong body, wrong brain in the wrong body. And then these kindergartners had the little boy go change. He came out and was reintroduced as a girl and with a new name. They trusted their teacher. I have since done a public records request, and it really wasn't the teacher. The parents had emailed the teacher emailed, and the administration said, what do I do? So-and-so is becoming a girl, and tomorrow, it was the second to last day of school, tomorrow he's coming and wants to be called she, and it was the administration that told this teacher said, I'll just keep them separate, like not do boy and girl things. Then I don't have to deal with it. We're 2 days away from kindergarten graduation, which is sort of another thing. But anyway, so the administration, and that teacher was just 2 months ago awarded Teacher of the Year for the California Charter School Association for impacting the lives of kids. And I agree, she impacted the lives of kids. She impacted it really negatively. Yes, just because you came early and this is your second time, I'm going to let you ask a question right now.
It's not a question.
Oh.
I retired last year from teaching, but last year, towards the end of the school year, a girl walked in my classroom. She was a freshman. I was really upset, and I said, "What's wrong?" She goes, "I just came from the cafeteria." I go, "And?" She goes, "Well, all the questions in the cafeteria, and they taught us all how to put a condom on a banana, and they gave us all condoms And I go, what do your parents say about this? She goes, that's the thing, parents weren't told.
Yeah, see,
This is Charter Oak High School in Covina.
yeah, no, this is, and I'm telling you, kids aren't coming home and telling you, because they know, and they're embarrassed. It really hit me today. We had lunch, and can you imagine now with smartphones, after you're in this class, the kids, what they're going out and Googling?
Yep.
Frightening. So I love my teacher. She's a Christian. She goes to our church. Don't just assume that. I'm not saying that they're all bad, but I'm saying don't make that assumption because it's going to cost our kids. You cannot unsee or unrape the mind when it's seen something, especially for a young boy or girl going through puberty. You can't undo it once it's done. They cannot undo that. And I'll leave that for church, some of the other stuff. Common misunderstandings, I'm hearing this everywhere. Oh, we're not going to do the sex ed this year. We're not going to do that. Oh, really, you're not? We kind of talked about this. We're going to do the conservative approach and fly under the radar screen. Really? Because Planned Parenthood is doing open records requests, and Equality California is sending out surveys to every single school district, including Chino Valley Unified. And I'm going to end with the last few minutes on the opt-out, because there's a lot of, and then let me make sure that's my last one. Well, I'll leave it there, because I know I'm going to end on opt-out. There's a lot of misunderstanding about the opt-out form and about whether or not you can opt out of sex ed. Now, we talked about the law, and the law says it must be taught once in junior high / middle school and once in high school. And if you teach it any younger, you must teach the same things. And here's a list of the things you must teach. You must be affirmative on, you must talk affirmatively on sexual orientation, gender identity. You must talk about all the local resources, all the different birth control, all of those mandates. In the law, when it was written, and to this day, they define things. And the very first thing they do, actually, I'm going to pull it. Here's the bill that is now the law. Very first thing they do is they define words. And they define the word comprehensive sexual health education means education regarding human development, sexuality, including education on pregnancy, contraception, and sexually transmitted infections. Okay, so I would, not knowing all of this, I think, okay, that's the basics, human development, body changes, you know, he needs to start wearing deodorant, hair's growing, that kind of thing. It then goes on to say, however, gender identity isn't part of the technical term comprehensive sexual health education. It then goes on to say you may opt out, a parent may opt out of comprehensive sexual education. Keep in mind, you and I are thinking that's everything under the sun. The law was really specific that it's comprehensive sexual education. And in other places like the analysis of the bill and what they call legislative intent, when you go back and look at legislative intent, they were very clear to separate gender identity, affirming homosexuality, anal sex, all of that totally separate from what you and I think is comprehensive sexual education. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? It's a very narrow. Now, there might be a rural school district that is choosing to let it be and I would think the right way, but technically it's not legal to let them opt out of. And an example, Positive Prevention Plus is 12 lessons long. 12 lessons of confidentiality, of gender identity, of anal sex. Did we see anything about, I mean, I went past the one body form, but about, you know, your body odor and, you know, just normal changes you might be going through, and let's just talk about that? No, it was all the other information. So there's a lot of misinformation about the law, but we've been working with Alliance Defending Freedom, and they've approved a policy that we came up with. Our long-term goal, I'm hearing from you guys, I know you guys are going to your pastor and Gina and saying, what can we do, what can we do? Long-term, we need to change the law. But we can't get the law changed in the next couple of weeks, as much as I would like to. It is going to be years, just because elections have consequences, and the way the makeup of the legislature is, we're about to lose our free speech rights if we don't get really busy. So we can't change the law today. So long-term, that is my goal. But how do we protect the kids now? Because you must take it. And if you sign that opt-out form, you're thinking they're opted out of all 12 lessons. There's no guarantee unless you have an explicit opt-out. And so we've created a policy, and we've placed it before the school board, at least Chino Valley Unified School Board, that says comprehensive sexual education is this, and you're allowed to opt out. We'd also like parents to be notified about this, family life education, and let them choose to be so they need to be notified and given the ability to opt out. If they want their kids in it, great. If they don't, that's up to the parent. And so we've put that policy forward. ADF stands behind it. Alliance Defending Freedom, if you're not familiar, they've won 7 U.S. Supreme Court cases in 7 years, and just in the last 6 months, they've argued 2 before the U.S. Supreme Court. They have a pretty good track record on religious freedom, free speech, and they stand behind this policy. And we are asking that local school districts, with our help, because it is kind of a complicated, a lot of misinformation out there, that we get policies like this passed that say you're going to notify the parents and you're going to allow them to opt out. And as we work on that as local communities, we then will start going to those town halls and asking our legislator how they feel. The climate will change. People will get educated. We have a woman up here that went and told all of her neighbors all about what's going on, and flyers. So you need to go home. You need to share this information with others. You need to go to the school board meeting. You need to get on our email list and contact our group. You need to form a parent committee, and then we work with the parent committee about how to put the item on the agenda. You're going to hear a lot of reasons as to, well, why you need to change this word on the policy, or why that. We've argued through that with Alliance Defending Freedom. We do conference calls. We'll probably do a conference call with Gina and some of the school board members here locally so that you understand the law and what was the thinking behind why you chose these words. Well, because Planned Parenthood had a lot of time when they were planning the words they were using when they crafted this legislation. And they knew not only legislatively, but what it would mean and if it ever went to court. We're just reacting to something that everyone's going, wow, what's happening this week in, sex education, and why is this such a big deal? They knew what they were doing when they wrote it, and we have to be just as wise and crafty in our policy, countering it to not just hold up locally, but when and if it ever goes to court, because that's where all of this stuff is headed. So, can I take? Yeah. We'll do questions. 2. I'm boss. No questions, or you just don't want to? Oh, yes, because you looked so eager, and you're wearing hot pink or magenta. Go ahead.
I'm going to be giving a speech tomorrow. If anyone is interested, Orange County Department of Education in Costa Mesa, they have a monthly meeting. It's at 10 o'clock tomorrow. There's going to be I'm going to be giving a speech, and we are pleading with OCDE as to change the policy that's coming up. As you know, Brenda left that. I'm kind of at a loss as to how to do this, because I'm just I'm late in the game, and I want to make an impact to the board, and so I need your advice. And maybe if any of the parents, or I don't know who we all are here, but if you guys want to show up and just kind of plead your case, that would be great. Tomorrow, 10 o'clock, OCDE, it's on the website. They're not expecting, me or any of us. I think we need to show force, because they think it's really, they think we're stupid. And it's really insulting.
Well, actually, I think they're having a press conference, so I think they know you're coming. Community's upset, and it made national news. That is the thing. Parents are outraged by this. Here's the tension, and then I'll take another, a question, because I really want to make sure you guys have come out, stayed here late. If there's a question, I want to be able to answer it for you. I'm working on changing a policy to protect the hearts and minds of the kids. I'm never going to be able to change Orange County Legal Counsel, what their legal interpretation is. That's kind of like you've got Clarence Thomas that interprets one thing and Ruth Bader Ginsburg that interprets the law another way. So I'm not going to try and convince that one to change a legal opinion. But I do know we can have a policy that respects parental rights. And I do know that we can put forth a policy that is going to protect parental rights. So I love the outrage, and we should be outraged. It is just, and some of the testimonies, I don't know if you were there last month, but very impactful at the Orange County meeting. And one was really graphic, and I turned to Gina and I said, oh gosh, I'm going to have to start to use that testimony. But I mean, when my jaw's dropping at this stuff, and they're reading from the curriculum, you know it's pretty bad. So it is really bad, and Orange County is standing behind it. And I hate giving elected officials an out, but the law does mandate you teach this. Now, you don't have to teach it earlier, and you shouldn't, again, teach it earlier, but you need to have something that you're working for, and that's why we're working for a policy that allows you to know and opt out before, so you can make the decision. And it may be different for different kids. I mean, we had 4 kids. They were each different. Well, we have 2 trouble. But, you know, she'll go, oh, you let Josh stay out till whatever. Yes, because Josh made wise choices. He was self-governed. So yes, his curfew was different, and he was a boy. So there I go again. So, okay, just because she's, okay, I'm going to go with 2 more because she's holding hers up, and then you were going like this, and I've done that before. So we'll go back, and then I'll stay around.
So I
Yeah.
asked out my daughter, and my reason was I had to write a note that he didn't give me a permission slip. So I wrote a note saying I opted out because I had no idea what the curriculum was going to be. I Googled with the transgender. Now, my question is, now that I opted her out, they don't have any curriculum for the one child or maybe 5 children that opt out of the school because nobody else knew. They have nothing. So now she has to do whatever review chapter 9 for the
Right.
last
Okay. First, what district are you in?
OMSC. And they just started in Ontario.
Oh, Ontario, Montclair, sorry.
The class was, so Wednesday, so the class was the following Tuesday for 3 whole weeks. And then they didn't tell me anything. So.
Yes, and they probably did, but at the beginning of the school year with a whole bunch of notices, and you had no idea. So that's going to be their legal out. Having said that, and Josh is, our middle one's 31, and we opted him out, and he and one other kid, you know, went to the library. I think we get this policy passed, and they're going to have 21 kids that they're going to have to come up with the curriculum for, and 10 kids that are going, Mom, why didn't you opt me out? And that is my hope as people get educated, outraged. I would also encourage you to go and ask to see all of the curriculum and to make sure that that opt-out form means your child is opted out of every single one of those lessons. And if not, then every Tuesday or whatever day that is from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, because right now is when they typically teach sex education in the schools, right at May, at the end of the year, and then parents forget about it, and their kids, you know, and then they think we're going to go away, but I'm pretty tenacious. I'm not going away. I'm a Spitfire, which is a nice name. But you need to make sure, and please contact me if they are not letting you opt out, because I can help you create something until we can get a policy passed at your school district that notifies you. But they are supposed to provide them an alternative curriculum, and they cannot discriminate against them. And yeah, they stick them usually in a library. I mean, that's the way it was when our kids were there. But I think the tide is turning, and once you look at that curriculum, share with neighbors. You would be surprised. This is not an issue that is just the church is upset about. Even those people who will take their child to Planned Parenthood and put them on birth control at 16 they don't want the school keeping this information or teaching it to them at a certain grade or keeping secrets from the parents. So this is a universal thing. It's a parental rights thing. If you choose to have your kid in the transition ceremony for I Am Jazz, I may never let my child spend the night at your house, but that is your right. You will stand before the Lord. That is not, for me, if you're going to let your child in that class, then again, I may totally disagree, but that child, but don't tell me my child has to be in it. Don't tell me my child has to learn about anal sex in 7th grade. Don't tell me my child needs to learn how to put a condom on a banana. That's fine for you to believe that. Public schools, they belong to the public. And I think and I'm a Christian, as believers, I think for a long time we heard about, the religious right in the schools. I remember I got involved because I went to see the religious right at a school board meeting 23 years ago. I thought, well, surely I've met one of these. I'm a new believer, and I married a guy from Campus Crusade for Christ, so I've certainly seen one of these religious writers. I went to the school board meeting, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm it. I actually believe in abstinence, and I didn't grow up in a Christian home. We weren't even Easter, Christmas attenders. Yeah, that's how bad it was, and I still was taught, sex is for marriage, and you don't go doing it. So this school board meeting, I was like, surely I've run into one of these extremists that's trying to ruin the school district. You'd be surprised how many people really do think like you, and that you need to really educate others on what's going on, because they are not okay with this. They think like we do. They just don't know. And I can tell you the other thing. School districts will tell you, and teachers will tell you, and superintendents will tell you, you're the only person that's complained about this. Oh, really? Really? Because really? I hadn't heard that, because no one else. I swear, they take seminars on that, and I'm not. Mike Spence sat on a school board for 20-some years. Am I telling it like it is? Yeah. Oh, you're the only one that's complained about that. I really don't know why you're so upset. Or now, in this case, they can actually say it's the law. Over here. And then if Gina says, then I'll take yours. Well, this one, because she did that hand up really high, too. Yes.
Did I hear you correctly? More anal sex as a way to become abstinent? Did I hear that right?
Well, I did leave the oral off, but but you might have learned that when Bill Clinton was around. So there is throughout the curriculum, repeatedly, and in the teacher's manual, as well as the teacher training that they attend, where that is a way to remain abstinent or a way to not get pregnant. And sometimes they'll even say STIs, even though that isn't true. But yes. So I this time I don't think I said oral, but it is in the teacher training, and it is repeatedly throughout all 3 curriculums. And I'm just going to throw one out because I haven't gotten to say the word tonight. But Advocates for Youth, which is one of the curriculum, it's the free one, they're using it in San Diego. The 6th grade teacher notes, starting in 6th grade, lesson 1, tells the teacher, don't refer, because of this whole gender thing, don't refer to them as a person, as a girl or a she. Refer to them as a person with a vulva. I kid you not. Go look online or check out, actually. Grade 6, lesson 1. Language is really important, and we've intentionally been very careful about our language throughout this curriculum. You may notice language throughout the curriculum that seems less familiar. Using the pronoun they instead of her or him, using gender-neutral names in scenarios and role plays referring to someone with a vulva versus a girl or a woman. So if you're referring to a person with a vulva, what are you referring to the other person? Person with, yes, I'm not going to even look at the side of the room that said it, but it was over here. So I went to a school board meeting, and I got up and I complained, and I said, you're going to say people with vulvas line up over here, people with this line up over here. And there were some people from my church in the audience. This was probably the first time it probably was the first time, but I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go out and say it. If they think this is okay for sixth graders, then I'm going to say it. So the next month, in the school board minutes, it came up that Mrs. England objected to the word vulva. And I was like, okay, I don't want someone to take that and like start emailing that I'm some extremist like I thought before I went to my first school board meeting, that I don't even want science taught. And I had to get up and ask them to correct the amendments, that I wanted it all in context, and I had to say the V word again and the P word again, and I was like, you are not portraying my comments. I am more, and so are our girls, more than a person with a vulva. And anyway, I just, went on a rampage again and had people from our church in the audience. But that's what they do. They then take that sentence, oh, look, she doesn't even want body parts taught. No, that isn't what I got up and said at all. As a matter of fact, I said lots of different body parts and was very clear. This is the sixth grade curriculum right here. Advocates for Youth. San Diego is using this. They don't even have to teach it in sixth grade, but San Diego is teaching it. Every lesson plan from there on out, from sixth grade through 12th, tells them to refer to them as a person with a vulva. Yes. Sorry.
I requested the
Oh.
curriculum.
Ooh, what? First, tell me what school district, and I'm so excited. Uh-huh.
Or high school. So in junior high, they don't teach sex ed because even though elementary school is up to sixth grade, they consider sixth grade sex ed. My son had it last year. I watched the videos and stuff. This is for the high school, the ninth grade, and they only gave me the workbook for the kids. They did not give me the actual teacher's curriculum part. So I requested it again. I am concerned about a question, or can I show you?
You can, but forgive me for being so excited over sex ed curriculum, but I am. And kudos. No, seriously, and I hate it when Trump does this. Look, this is what you need to do, honestly. Look, she went, I'm serious. Do you know how many people don't go and demand, or they're just blown off? And she's like, but I don't have the teacher's manual. So yes, you can ask me, and then if it's a long answer, we'll dismiss, and if it's short. But yes, you can ask me. Look, honestly, this is why I do what I do.
I asked them for, because I watched the video last month, so we'll make it, so I asked them what.
Oh, you watched the video of me.
Yes. I'm just sharing it through. And I asked them for anything else that they teach this in, so they gave me about the history, and the one that concerned me a lot was for the LGBTIQ history, the first thing it says practice of pedophilia, which is pedophilia. And so I requested, why are they teaching that?
Okay, because I don't know how to, does anyone else know how to pronounce the word? Pederasty?
Pedophilia, the practice of pedophilia for the LGBT history. And so I'm requesting that, and I even yesterday.
Oh, please come up to the microphone because you are real life. And I'm not, this is why I do what I do. I am not crazy. Look, she brought it. Go ahead, finish. And actually, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you have to do this, and I am. Go ahead.
So I emailed and asked, I want to know what this is exactly being taught, because it's only giving me the PowerPoint presentation. It's not telling me everything that's being taught. So I asked them what was exactly being taught, because it's only the PowerPoint, it's only the workbook for the kids, so it's not, it gives me a general idea. One of the videos I was excited about because I thought it was, it said Miracle for Life video, and before the beginning of it, I was like, wait a second, did I put in the wrong thing? Because it was a beach scene and they were doing like these body shots and these breast shots and like all these shots, and then they led up to the whole
you know, fertilizing the egg, and then at the end, they showed an actual live birth for all the kids to see. So, this is the old version. They said that they don't have the new version of Teen Talk, but they will be getting it, but don't worry, because it's not soon, but eventually they'll have to get it. And I said, exactly when? And she said, well, within the year. So you really have to, I took notes, so I knew exactly what to ask. I have been going door to door. I only made like some, at church, they gave out the, on the common ground table, what was it, the harmful effects of, of the CSC, and I made copies of it, and I went door to door, actually found out where the Mormons live, because I heard they really, I was told to go to them first, so, I went to that neighborhood, and, but I don't know what to tell them to do besides inform people, so I kind of need to know what to do next, and, I want to help as much as I can. And is it true that not only is Planned Parenthood behind this, but the Kinsley Institute?
Oh, yeah, the and look, anyway, well,
Because that's frightening.
yes, the Kinsey Institute is behind this, and actually, Dr. Reisman is where I learned the whole condom fact from. If any of you know who Dr. Judith Reisman is, maybe we need to have her out here, but that's where I learned my condom fact about anal sex and how to talk like this, rolling off my tongue. I just don't have enough good things to say, but yes, it is all Kinsey, who was not a scientist. He was a zoologist who used really bad methods. Anyway, that's just way deep. Can everyone go home, find out what the curriculum is they're teaching, go physically get a copy of it, physically get a copy of the opt-out form or whatever they say the policy is. Like she did, dig deeper. If they're not following the law, why not? Because I have a feeling they are doing some different things. And can you make a copy and get me a copy of all the different curriculums that are out there? Ask detailed questions. Find out what is going on in the classroom in your school. And then I'm going to stay around because Gina's about to stand up, and I will answer questions, give contact information, all of that. Oh.
Okay, just a couple of things. I've heard a couple of people say, people don't believe me when I tell them about this. We have posted the law on our Common Ground website. It's commongroundaction.com. commongroundaction.com. Go to the page, and it's going to be one line where you can click and download or read the actual California Healthy Youth Act, print it, and share that with people. So take a look at that. Do we have anyone that has a kid in high school right now that's here? Has your child gone through it? Do you know? You don't know? Okay. Okay, well, that's it, guys. We have some information on the table here. Pick it up, and we'll see you next month.